Hello, everybody, and welcome to the NBA Trade Zone podcast, where we talk all things NBA trades, past, present, and future. Hi, guys. My name is Daniel.
And I am Sebastian, and today we are going to continue our podcast from last week, where we talk about some of the teams kind of in the middle hunting for a playoff run, and we're going to mainly focus on the West. Obviously, the very interesting thing is now with the Warriors not being with Steph Curry and Draymond Green being out, the Warriors are not on top of the league, and it pretty much seems like almost all the teams in the West are kind of in the playoff chase except the Phoenix Suns. So there's definitely a lot of teams to talk about. There's a lot of teams to see like what are some moves they can make in order to become one of the better teams in the playoffs and to see if they can make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's really interesting with the Western Conference because, I mean, even teams like Dallas, Sacramento are at 500. Minnesota stepped up their game, and then you have teams like Utah, Houston, who are expected to be real good, struggling. So literally, I mean, just about every team, I mean, only 5.5 games separates the first and the 14th place team in the Western Conference through about 20 games. That's pretty good. So really, a lot of these teams could be considered middling teams. Damn near all of them can be considered middling teams. I mean, obviously you got the Clippers on top, but then you also have the Warriors, Thunder, Nuggets right behind them. So, yeah, there's a lot each of these teams can really do. But I guess for right now, let's look at some of the teams really in between the 7th seed and the 14th seed. We got teams like San Antonio, Los Angeles, the Lakers, I should say, Houston, Utah, who are actually right at the bottom. And those are teams that are going to be looking most to make improvements. So why don't we start with Utah? Because Utah seems to be struggling more than any of these teams. They're 9-12 right now, and it really seems like they need to improve their roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Utah, the move to make right now is to try to pick up a player that can become a second option on offense with Donovan Mitchell. The trade I was thinking, the only one that really came up to my head would be make a trade for Aaron Gordon, where you move Derek Favors. You probably have to move a Dante Exum, who's a point guard that Orlando would need, and even probably have to include your draft pick in this deal in order to persuade the Magic to make this deal.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Exum's been struggling this year pretty mightily, and I mean, you're right. Orlando needs him. He's still pretty young. A lot of people were looking for him to be a breakout star, but yeah, first round pick would definitely have to be included. I don't know if the Magic are looking to trade Aaron Gordon. I guess that's the one thing that might put a stranglehold on this type of deals. I don't know. I mean, they have Mo Bamba, they have Isaacs, but both of them have not really had a lot of chance to prove themselves this year. So I don't know how much they want to trust those players right now, especially because Vucevic will more than likely be traded. Vucevic is someone who's been extremely impressive to me this year, but that's an episode. That's for another episode.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Magic are looking like they want to make the playoffs this year. I mean, to me, the way I see it, I think obviously they haven't made the playoffs for a bunch of years. But I do think the Magic are in a position that, you know what, another year of tanking and probably getting up another pick wouldn't hurt, especially since you have some players such as Bamba and Isaac who are, in my opinion, not getting enough minutes because of the players such as Vucevic, such as Aaron Gordon. Now, I understand Aaron Gordon's still a young player, but I do believe it'd be nice for them to make this to give these guys more playing time, give them more NBA experience. I don't know. Do you have any other options for Utah to make a trade?
I mean, yeah, that Kemba Walker trade I proposed before the season looks mightily good. Of course, and that's what I was about to say. Well, I mean, two good options. What I think would be Kemba Walker, who I don't think the Hornets at this point are trading, and if they are, they're asking for an arm and a leg for Kemba Walker. And another one I think might be good, maybe this upcoming off season, but I don't think he'll help him much this year. Depending on this will depend on what Utah could do in free agency. If they strike out on a lot of players, I think trading for Kevin Love will make sense for Utah. Like you said, they need another scorer. Kevin Love is just that. He stretches the floor, so he'll play well alongside Rudy Gobert. But with his injury right now, I don't know how much he could help them before they really fall out of the Western Conference race. I mean, he's not expected back till January, so I don't know how much he could help him. The only other options that I could think of that might be available are, I know this has been rumored a decent amount, is pairing Donovan Mitchell up with a Bradley Beal, or having Utah go out and try to trade for an Otto Porter. But again, I mean, with an Otto Porter, he's a nice player, but I think they need a little more than just an Otto Porter. So, I mean, what do you think? Do you think Bradley Beal and Donovan Mitchell could work well together as teammates?
I like the pairing. I think Bradley Beal is the type of player who stretches the floor, who is able to play make as well, that I think he would work well with another shooting guard. My question is, what can the Utah offer for Bradley Beal?
Well, that's the other problem. I mean, they have their picks. They have, Dante Exum again. He's been struggling so much, and he hasn't had a good career. I don't think he's got much, if any, trade value anymore. I mean, you have Grayson Allen there. It's a lot of guys that fit well in Utah, but not necessarily have a lot of trade value. So
here's my question though: do you think maybe it'd be smart for them to start using Rudy Gobert as trade bait?
No, he's too young. I mean, with Donovan Mitchell playing, again, Donovan Mitchell may be struggling a little bit, maybe going through that sophomore slump, but again, I don't think that's going to last. And Rudy Gobert is still a very young player. So I think keeping Rudy Gobert and Mitchell together is almost a necessity, especially in Utah where they're expected to win. And I think Donovan Mitchell, being on a team that was a winner last year, I think it'd be hard for him to regress and really accept the rebuild. So they really have to find something that will change things around for them. Another option could be trading for Tyreke Evans from Indiana. He hasn't gotten much playing time there at all. I don't think they're using him properly there, so I think you may be able to sneak out a Tyreke Evans from Indiana and not really necessarily give up a lot. And given more playing time, I think he'd be. I mean, he's still playing efficiently there, but just has barely been playing. They have way too many guards there. I think they have like 6 quality guards on that team. Some of them are playing as threes, sure, but still, there's only a limited amount of minutes to go around. So I think Tyreke Evans might be somebody else that they could get without necessarily having to give up too much.
Yeah, the only reason I bring up the Rudy Gobert because I was just listening to a podcast where they were talking about how Rudy Gobert is probably the person that's really hurting the most offensively because he can't stretch, and maybe he just isn't as productive as a player as he's been in the past. He doesn't make that enough of a difference defensively, so maybe it would be smart to trade him when his stock is probably pretty high. And trade him before his stock really does fall, which I don't know if it's going to happen. I mean, I've always been a Rudy Gobert fan, but if you tell me in 3 years that Rudy Gobert is pretty much insignificant in the league right now, I won't not believe it.
Yeah, I just think you can't. I think you'd really be killing the culture of that team. I think Donovan, especially really wanting to keep Donovan Mitchell there, I think you'd be really upsetting him. And I mean, granted, he's got 3 more years left on his contract, including this year, and then essentially then he's a restricted free agent, so there's only a limited amount of options he will have. But at the same time, I mean, you trade Rudy Gobert away, depending on what you get back, you might essentially be starting over. I don't know if the Jazz are willing to do that. In fact, I don't think they would be willing to do that. But, I mean, it's an interesting option, but I think they will do whatever they can, either this trade deadline or this free agency, when free agency rolls around this offseason, to really improve the team and, like you said, find someone that may complement Rudy Gobert a little more than Derek Favors does. And again, I think going to keep throwing his name out there. I think it makes the most sense. Kevin Love will probably be the person they look to trade for should they strike out in free agency. They'll have a lot of money to acquire him, even if it would be for no assets, but they'll definitely have to give up some assets for him. However, it won't be as much as others may require. So, moving on, I think we could touch up on Houston a little bit.
Houston's definitely in a position that they have to make a move. Now, again, I just don't see a bunch of assets being part of this team now. I mean, now maybe they're pick this year looks a little bit more valuable, but you're not going to get anyone close to as good as Jimmy Butler. What do you think are some options for them?
I mean, the obvious one, Kent Bazemore. Another pretty obvious one, Otto Porter. I mean, again, I would throw Tyreke Evans out there again because he could play some three, but I don't think Indiana, in order to do that, Indiana would have to take on some salary beyond this season, which I don't think they'd be willing to do because Houston doesn't have many expiring contracts, especially enough to match up with Tyreke Evans' contract. So I think that's basically out of the picture. So the two I'm really thinking are Otto Porter, Kent Bazemore. I mean, they could maybe go out and get a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope from the Lakers, but again, same situation as Indiana. They'd probably have to take on some salary. The Lakers are definitely not willing to do that, so that's probably out of the picture.
So when we think about it for Otto Porter, what's an offer they can make? They have Brandon Knight's contract, right?
They have Brandon Knight's contract. They could offer Brandon Knight, Marquise Chris, and they probably have to include Nene to match the salaries, which is fine. But then when it comes, I mean,
Wizards would not take any of those three players.
Well, then, they're not taking them. Well, here's what it would.
Does it take?
Well, okay, I think 1 first rounder, 1 second rounder, and at most, yes, for an Otto Porter. Well, here, let me explain that to you too. So now, if I'm trading away Marquise Chris, Nene, and Brandon Knight, Washington is still saving about $5 million this year, only this year alone, not to mention the future, and. Again, that Washington conversation is one we could do a whole episode on. And here's the situation: are they shedding salary, or are they trying to get something in return for these players? Because now, if you're trying to get something in return for these players, you have to take some bad contracts, and that's a decision. If Washington decides to rebuild, that's a decision they have to make. Should they take bad salaries? Now, if you ask me or you, a fan, of course we'll both probably say, yeah, take back bad contract, but we're not the ones paying. So in this situation that I'm proposing right now, they're saving about $4 million for this year, and they are $8 million over the luxury tax for a team that's 6-13, something like that. Not exactly sure what the record is. It's about 8-12. So for a team that's 8-12 right now, being able to save that $4 million, now all you have to do is get rid of Jason Smith's contract, he's on an expiring contract for $5 million. Now all of a sudden you're not paying the luxury tax. To an owner, that's pretty big. And if you could get a first-round pick in return, even if it's not that high, you're probably going to take it. And in all honesty, even if you're taking on bad contracts for Otto Porter, how much is a team really willing to give up? Maybe a first-round pick and another young player? So really here, you're getting a decent amount in return, but depending on what Washington wants to do.
Just Brandon Knight, Marquise Chris, and Nene Hilaire
and a first-round pick, though.
Negative players, right? So the only asset you're getting there, you're taking on some shitty players, and the only asset you're getting is 1 pick. I don't know if I'm Wizards, if I'm Otto Porter, I'm trying to get somewhere else. Now, obviously, he has a bad contract, so I don't...
Well, if you're Otto Porter, if you're the Wizards, if you're
the Wizard, you're trying to get something else, in my opinion. I think, obviously, the fit of Otto Porter would be pretty good, especially defensively for the Rockets, but I don't I gotta think that there's teams who are offering more than that.
See, I don't know. Every trade proposal that I've thought of for an Otto Porter, and there'll be a decent amount because Otto Porter makes a lot of sense for a lot of these teams. I'll throw him in. We'll touch on a few other teams in a few seconds, but again, you're probably getting a first round pick, a mid to late first round pick, and another young player. So, for example, if Portland wants to trade for Otto Porter, you're giving up a Myers Leonard, probably maybe a Mo Harkless or an Evan Turner, one of those contracts. And then you're probably a first-round pick and Anthony Simons, for example, if you're Portland. Now, Anthony Simons was a pretty late first-round pick this past season, and you're getting another first-round pick. Both pretty late. So, yeah, sure. You're getting essentially 2 first-round picks, but they're both not high first-round picks. And Houston just showed they're willing to throw 2 first-round picks. So fine, they could throw 2 first-round picks at Washington, maybe protected a little heavier than 1 would be. So sure, maybe they throw 2 first-round picks. That could be an option as well. I think another team he would make perfect sense for actually would be the Spurs. And the reason why I think he would make a lot of sense there, beyond the fact that obviously he's a good 3-and-D player, which any team could really use, but is because his contract would expire at the same time that DeRozan's and LaMarcus Aldridge's contracts expire. So now all 3 of them have 3 years left, including this one. You trade him to San Antonio. All of a sudden now, even if they begin to struggle, You still have Aldridge there. You still have DeRozan there. Your cap space is pretty limited, so it's not like you're able to sign that much players to help them. Might as well take on an Otto Porter to try to